We've all been there, staring at a study guide, unsure of where to start or how to approach the tasks. But don't worry, that's why we're here today. We'll be exploring the 6th grade language study guide for the Abeka Language Semester Exam 5, which covers a variety of topics, from identifying verb types and their forms, to correcting verb usage, and even touching on the essentials of capitalization and punctuation. Ready to embark on this learning journey? Stick around. The first part of our guide focuses on identifying verb phrases and their types. So let's dive into the world of action, being, and linking verbs. Now, what are these, you might ask? Well, an action verb, as the name suggests, refers to an action. It could be a physical action like jumping or a mental action like thinking. A being or state of being verb, on the other hand, indicates a state or condition. Words like is, are, was, and were are common being verbs. Linking verbs, meanwhile, serve as a bridge that links the subject of a sentence to additional information about that subject. They don't express action, but rather a state or condition. For instance, the word seem in the sentence, "You seem happy," is a linking verb, connecting the subject you to the information happy. To identify these verbs, we'll underline the verb phrases twice. But what's a verb phrase? It's simply a main verb and its helpers, also known as auxiliary or helping verbs. For example, in the sentence, "She has been running," is the verb phrase. Once we've identified and underlined the verb phrases, the next step is to categorize them as action, being, or linking verbs. We do this by writing an A for action, L for linking, or B for state of being, and the blank spaces provided. Take, for example, the sentence, "All of my books have been read at least 2 times. Here, have been read is the verb phrase. But is it an action, linking, or being verb? That's for you to figure out. Let's try another one. Dad will be driving us to ball practice. Here, will be driving is the verb phrase. But again, is it an action, linking, or being verb? Remember, practice makes perfect. So, take your time and focus on understanding the concept. By the time you're finished, you'll be an expert at identifying and categorizing verb phrases. Now let's move on to the next part of our guide. Next up, we have a section dedicated to verb forms. The beauty of language lies in its complexity and versatility. A significant part of this versatility is the use of verb forms. They are the backbone of our sentences, providing vital information about the action and the time it took place. In English, verbs can take on many forms, and it's important to choose the right one to convey the correct meaning. To help you with this, we have a series of sentences with verbs in parentheses. Your task is to fill in the blank with the correct form of the verb. For example, consider the sentence, "Jack and Jill have go up the hill to get some water." We need to think about the tense of the sentence. Since the action has already happened, we use the past participle form of go, which is gone. So the sentence becomes, "Jack and Jill have gone up the hill to get some water." Another example is, "I think you arrive earlier." Write down the correct form of the word think. Remember, verb forms can change based on the tense of the sentence and the subject. It's important to consider both these factors while completing this section. For instance, in the sentence, "Jason is lie down now," the verb lie changes to lying because the action is happening in the present continuous tense, and Jason is a singular subject. Similarly, in the sentence, "He bring his trumpet to band practice all last week," the verb bring changes to brought because the action happened in the past. This exercise is a great way to practice and improve your understanding of verb forms. It's not just about memorizing the different forms, but also about understanding when and how to use them. Always remember to consider the tense and subject-verb agreement while working on this section. Our next section is all about correcting verbs. Now let's dive into the 3rd section of our study guide. This is where we focus on the proper usage of verbs. Sometimes, even when we're confident about our grammar, we can slip up and use a verb incorrectly. This section is designed to help us identify these mistakes and correct them. The instructions are pretty straightforward. Each sentence contains a blank space. If the verbs in the sentence are used correctly, you should write correct in the blank. However, if a verb is not used correctly, you should underline the error and write the correct form of the verb in the blank. Remember not to change the helping verbs. We're focusing on the main verbs here. For example, if you see a sentence like, "He was running fastly," you would underline fastly and write the correct form, fast, in the blank. Let's go over a few examples. We seen the smoke rising from their campfire. Here, the verb seen is used incorrectly. Can you identify the correct form, or how about this one? He thought about getting up but decided to lay there a while longer. Is lay the correct verb in this context? These are the types of questions you'll need to answer in this section. Be mindful of the context of each sentence. Remember, some verbs change their form depending on the tense or the subject. And also, don't forget about irregular verbs. They can be quite tricky. For instance, the past tense of go is went, not goed. Keep these irregularities in mind as you work through this section. We've arrived at the capitalization and punctuation section of our guide. Capitalization and punctuation may seem like small details in the grand scheme of writing, but they're actually quite significant. They're the unsung heroes, the behind-the-scenes workers that keep our sentences flowing smoothly and our meaning clear. Without them, we'd have a much harder time understanding each other. So let's dive into this section and see how we can polish up these sentences. Our first sentence is a historical one about Neil Armstrong's moon landing. Now, we know that specific dates and proper nouns, like names and titles, need capitalization, and we can't forget punctuation either. Every sentence needs a clear beginning and end, and sometimes we need commas to break things up a bit. The second sentence involves Laura Ingalls Wilder's book, Little House on the Prairie. Again, we have proper nouns and titles which need capital letters. Punctuation is also crucial here, especially when it comes to correctly quoting a book title. Next, we have a dialogue sentence. Dialogue can be tricky as it often involves multiple punctuation marks. Quotation marks, commas, and question marks might all make an appearance. And don't forget about capitalizing the first word of the quote and proper nouns like Aunt Jill. Now it's your turn to put these principles into practice. Take a look at these sentences and see where you can add capital letters and punctuation marks. Remember, it's not about adding as many as you can, but about using them effectively to make the sentence clear and readable. And that's it for this section. I hope this gives you a better understanding of the importance of capitalization and punctuation in writing. We have come to the final section, diagramming. In the space provided, diagram the subjects and verbs of the following sentences. Number 1, my aunt and uncle have been in Mexico. Number 2, in a forest was a splendid castle with great stone. Number 3, the knights of the castle wore beautiful armor and carried long spears. Often they aided travelers in distress. Finish diagramming these sentences on your own. Well, that brings us to the end of our study guide walkthrough. We've covered quite a bit of ground today. Great job! Good luck with your exam. It's only through practice that you'll truly master them. So take your time, go through the exercises, and don't hesitate to replay any parts of the video if you need to. Remember, every step you take towards learning is a step towards success. Keep practicing, and you'll master these concepts in no time.